Hey guys, so this is kind of going to be starting of a new series we're looking at doing here for Urban Gaming Elite that we're calling Discussions in Gaming, and it's going to be headed up by myself. Some of you may know me, but I typically go by TheRedGamer, otherwise you can call me Alex, and I am the current CEO and founder of Urban Gaming Elite. If you've never checked out our website before or heard of us, I highly recommend you do. You can find the URL down in the description below, otherwise it is urbangamingelite.com. So the kind of principle behind what we're doing here is a new way to kind of talk about different things in gaming that will be a little bit more unscripted, less edited. One of the more annoying things I see, and sometimes when watching discussion videos, are a bunch of these snap edits that you kind of see in between. And I think it takes away the kind of the legit feel of it feeling more like a discussion than anything else. We're also looking at bringing on people here to actually talk to, some future developers that we've talked to before, and to kind of bring some discussion pieces with it. Other ones will be more of a solo talk by myself or others within the crew. So hopefully you'll like what we're doing with it. If you have suggestions on what you'd like to see us talk about, you can always post them down in the comments below or send us an email, tweet, whatever, kind of let us know what you're thinking. We'd also love to know if you guys kind of enjoy these exchanges, you think they're worth to see, or not so much. So the one we're going to talk about this week is kind of our intro one, is comparing video games to different types of media, specifically movies and books. I was always a big reader when I was younger, and I recently got back into reading, actually through the assistance of a friend. And if any of you have ever read the Kingskiller Chronicles, very, very good series. I'm about 2/3 of the way through the second book right now, and absolutely loved it. The perfection in the writing is just beautiful. But as I got to the end of the first book, it kind of made me think about the power that the story had, as opposed to what you kind of see in a movie, and kind of in comparison to what you see in a video game. Now, a lot of the great video games out there that I've always loved have an extremely powerful story. Recent games include, Dragon Age Inquisition, which is, highly regarded for its story. And even beyond that, I was always a big fan of the Mass Effect series for pretty much a similar reason. Story in games is huge. And in the modern day, where everybody's focusing more on graphics and multiplayer, story sometimes kind of takes a side seat. Not as much as it used to back in the early parts of gaming, back in the 80s and 90s, but we're still seeing a little bit of a fall off for it, where games that really have a good story, to my opinion, shine quite a bit more. And, taking Mass Effect actually as an example, what I thought made Mass Effect so great, what made it such an amazingly powerful game, and really brought the fan base it did, had everything to do with the environment it created. You play a story in Mass Effect that is wide-reaching, but realistically a small part of what's happening in the day-to-day activities. You learn histories of wars from years past, different activities going on, political strifes, combat, etc., that you aren't a part of. You hear about, maybe you make a decision or weigh in on it, but in general, it's something that's happening parallel to your own activities. And that creates such a massive scope of the world that you're in that you definitely feel like it's realistic. But even more so, you feel like you have a piece of interaction in the game. And I think that's really where I want to talk about the big difference between video games and movies. In a movie, you watch an experience unfold. You watch something unfold, and you're a casual observer to it. You may feel engaged, or you may feel interactive with the movie based on how it's designed. But in general, your reactions, your feedback, statements, decisions have no effect on the story. The story's going to happen no matter what. Even going into older video games that didn't have the decision-making system we do today, you still kind of had that feeling. You were the great big warrior with the shotgun going through in Doom, trying to save it from Hell's minions. Or more modern games with Mass Effect, trying to stop it from the Reapers. You have a direct interaction with what's going on in the world, and therefore you become engrossed in it. You become a part of this world you're either trying to save or destroy, depending on the game. A movie doesn't give you that. A movie is a laid-out story, a pre-planned plot or storyline that you just watch. And while it can have a great, powerful effect, video games give you almost the cinematic quality of a video, which some argue in books that you kind of lose that visual aspect of it, but also having the engrossing and engaging nature of a book. Now let me explain a bit what I mean. In a book, you obviously don't have the interaction that you do in a video game, but you have the detail. You have this description and engrossing piece that really lays out the land kind of in terms of what this world you're reading is. Storylines are depicted in great detail, political strifes are examined, and usually a book is told from a perspective of someone's either opinion or how they viewed a certain series of events. That makes a big difference in understanding the details behind it, creating a world in which you are to become a part of. The recent story I mentioned with, Kingskiller Chronicles, the first one I read, which was, Name of the Wind, and the second one, which is A Wise Man's Fear. there's a lot of detail in the story that helps to really engross you in what's going on, whether it be a description of a person or description of activity. Movies don't give you that. Movies are usually cut down to a 2-hour sphere, and you kind of have to pack as much as you want into that, and so a lot gets lost in the nuance and subtlety of it. So my whole point behind this, kind of coming full circle on it, is one of the big things that I think video games don't really get a fair quality or fair attention on is their own presence in the world of art or representation. There was a discussion a while back, about a couple years ago, as to whether or not video games should be represented or recognized as a style of art. The general public community kind of knocked that down, saying that games don't have the proper quality of it, and I could quote 5 to 10 different people that would follow up with comments on that, whether you're talking about games in general or even the realm of esports not being a true sport. I faithfully disagree. So many pieces of video games lately have shown that they are much larger and of a much better genre than they get represented as. What used to be a period of entertainment, something to take up a half an hour of your day, have become much more engrossing pieces where entire realms of lore and books and stories are written on video games. People have massive discussions on forums or in public settings discussing the nuances of a game's, implications or what happens at the end, with cliffhangers and side stories and all the pieces with it. Much like you get when reading a book. A book often facilitates discussion. A good book, at least, facilitates discussion. When you finish a great book, you don't put it down and be like, all right, on with my day. It has a lasting effect on your mentality. You think about it, you usually long over it or think about little pieces throughout. A movie may get you to think, but very rarely does it ever have that same long-lasting presence, at least in my opinion. Video games, in turn, have that long-lasting presence of a book while still having the kind of powerful cinematics of a video or of a movie. And honestly, in that realm of it, to not look at video games as an art piece today, so to speak, within the scope of games and how they're changing today, with many looking at designing games with very specific features or exploring cultures or giving help to other people with games for change principles. All of that really comes together to show that games are no longer this pastime of kids. It's not something that you do hidden in a basement and not tell anyone about anymore. Social communities have grown alongside of it, and competitive environments, esports, even just the general competitive environment for a person that wants to play a competitive game, but maybe not at a supremely competitive level. There are systems of tiers and ladders and different prize systems or scoring systems that help a person feel like they're part of a committee or part of a group of competitive players without having to enroll in a tournament and try to be the best. That creates such an awesome, engaging experience for a lot of players that I think it gets missed sometimes, the power that games can actually have. Games showcase this powerful idea that, with critical thinking and strategy and tactical prowess, you can overcome any situation. Think of any games in the modern realm, even games that you wouldn't necessarily think about that, with looking at the FPS or the first-person shooter realm. Taking games like Far Cry 4 that help push this idea of, routine, practice, and leveling yourself up, so to speak, a defining characteristic of RPGs, all helps push people to the realm that with a certain tact, a certain tactical expertise, or correct approach can overcome just about anything. Books don't necessarily give you that, and a movie really doesn't give you that. A movie feels very many times reserved from the actual world, while video games, despite many times being in alternate universes, have a much more powerful effect. It's just kind of a thought to carry with you, I guess, as you're playing your next game. Think about what it does to you afterwards. Think about where your mind goes as you're playing the game. Or the next time you play a game, after you've finished one, does your mind pick up on things from the previous one? Does it play with story ideas? I don't know if you're like me with it, where I honestly, a lot of big games, I will scour forums and different postings, wikis, etc., to kind of piece together the little elements of the lore or pieces of the story I might have missed. Even with a game that doesn't do that to you, and even if you're not the person that takes away a game that way, think about the lasting impact it has on your mind when you play. Do you take certain prowess in finishing a game with finding all the challenges, doing the 100% completion? Do you take more joy in going through the game as fast as possible? All of those are reflections of your personality, and games give you that choice. You can't control the speed at which you watch a movie, and while to a varying degree you can control the speed at which you read a book, not to the same degree at which the story is told, unless you skip over pages. Excuse me. Unless you skip over pages or completely bypass chapters, that's just not a facet that you're given. It's just an interesting piece. It's something I've thought about recently as I've started to read books again, and I've started to play some of the more story-based games, especially going through some of the Telltale games with The Wolf Among Us, the Game of Thrones one, and The Walking Dead. It really puts a different perspective on gaming that we just haven't seen in a while, where games used to be kind of more of this singular linear goal. Today have brought arching storylines, continuing storylines, and entire premises of lore behind them. Whether that's meant to introduce cultural concerns or play upon a typical political concern that every person's experienced, the games leave you a lasting impression. So take that with you next time you're playing a game, or even better, next time you're watching a movie. Think about the interactions that you wish you could do, the fight scenes you wish you could be a part of, or the decisions you wish you could influence. You might find yourself challenging a movie's premise a bit more, or challenging what a certain character would do. I know I have at times, watching a movie and thinking, why would a person do that? They may give you a basis or a reason for it, but many times you can find an alternate solution. Games give you that choice, that feeling that you actually cause the decisions, despite the fact that you may not cause anything at all. Movies, you're just an observer to, and books, while more engrossing and more detailed, are still an observation you see. So think with it the next time you're playing a game, next time you're watching a movie or reading a great book. See how it affects your mind. See how it affects how you think of other pieces. And equally important, remember the next time you're playing a game that this is something that someone poured their heart and life into. They have made a masterpiece of this idea. So don't just toss it away as a game in your mind anymore. Represent and appreciate the games that truly define an art form. Because the public community is never going to represent that. They will never understand what we may see in video games, unless we show it to them. So representing your own games in that way, representing your own gameplay as something more than just an entertaining thing to do on a Friday night, can help the culture and the general community see it the same way. You'd be surprised what you can do when you just change your mind of thought. Well, that's been this week's Discussions in Gaming. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it's given you maybe a differing perspective or thought. As I mentioned, if you have something you're interested in hearing us talk about, or a specific concept you want us to explore, please let us know in the comments down below. You can always hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, or the website as well. Shoot us an email. Let us know what you think. Equally important, I definitely want to know what you think about this premise, if you kind of like the video blog piece as opposed to just writing the article, as we're kind of exploring some different ideas. And with that, again, I'm TheRedGamer, Alex, CEO and founder of Urban Gaming Elite, and this has been Discussions in Gaming. Thanks.